Sweet. Well, this is great because I don't have to prepare at all.
I didn't know if you were going to have questions that you wanted me to ask you.
No, we haven't talked about it, so we'll see how you do.
This is so weird. I'm used to you grilling me or taking the lead. What's your favorite part about programming?
Oh, geez, we're getting right into it here.
What's your favorite thing?
No fluff at all.
No.
Most shows small talk at least a little bit before they get into it.
How you doing, Ben? How's life?
Great.
Things are good?
What's the question again?
What's your favorite part about programming? Do you have a favorite type of athlete that you like to program for?
Well, I feel like those are two different questions.
They are. We'll just lump them right into one.
I like writing for people who do their programming. It's a good start.
Do you get a lot of people that don't?
No. Or people who end up modifying quite a bit of stuff or like having to change it or like that is what it is. Like sometimes people are just either busy or they have like stuff going on that they got to navigate with like joint stuff or other things. But when you don't have any of that stuff, it's really nice and you just get to push the person, which is always fun.
Yeah.
So that's nice. If I had my wish, everybody would be healthy all the time and everybody would have an infinite amount of time to train and just do that all the time.
I always felt like if I didn't do something that was programmed, or if I did it wrong, I'm like, oh man, I just wasted his time. He took all this, like, in my mind, he took all this time to write something for me, and I either did it wrong or I couldn't. There's not very many times that I can't do it, but if I can't, I'm like, I feel like I wasted your time. Do you ever feel like that?
So
honestly,
I mean, there are times where like whatever it was is no longer applicable, and essentially it's a wasted effort. Like if someone does get injured, it's like you're not just gonna. They do something to their knee. It's like you're not gonna do their back squat progression that you build out. So you scrap it and you start over. Like COVID, everybody got shut down. I was like, well, okay, now we have to refigure out who's got what equipment at home and restart everybody on a new cycle of some kind because all of a sudden all the weights got taken away essentially for most people.
Oh yeah, man, I wasn't with you then, so
yeah, that
had to be frustrating.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have anybody just quit?
Probably. Not that I remember that was like up front, like they got shut down. There's like, no, but like certainly people fell out of practice a little bit more during that time.
Yeah.
But I don't think like directly, like since I can't go to the gym, I'm not hiring you as my coach anymore. I don't think so.
Oh, that's good.
The Fitness Movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all at one place, zorfitness.com. Anyway, today we're kind of wanting to talk through class programming a little bit. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot on here, I've talked about individualized programming, and obviously that's what I do for remote clients, which is primarily who I'm kind of targeting, so to speak, through the podcast. Mm. But there's a lot of people who listen to the podcast who are at an affiliate, who are coaches at an affiliate, who, are athletes who take some classes or something, and it's kind of a good perspective to have an idea of group training. So
yeah,
figure we could sit down and do this.
So class programming. How much weight do you give to like the fun factor of things? Do you sit down? I think there's gyms out there that probably take things a little too seriously. Like you're here to get better. You're here to be an athlete. You're here to, make all these gains. How much time do you take to think about, I really want these people to have fun too? Like, do you look at a workout and think, oh man, they're going to love this. They're going to be really excited. Or is it just about the progress?
Yeah. I definitely do think about the fun factor, not so much as like most of your like CrossFit workouts in like traditional sense like aren't like super like fun like in the actual moment of you doing it.
I mean, we think
it's not like beach volleyball, right? Where it's like, oh, this is super fun while I'm playing it.
Right.
it's like fun 2.0 a little bit. Like this was a really fun challenge, which is a different kind of fun. So I do think about trying to incorporate as much variety as reasonable. And like, for example, you could make a back squat progression that is very good at like increasing people's 1 rep maxes. That is very boring to do. And I give those a lot to row clients who like their only goal is to like get better. Like, and to a certain extent, I understand that like if people want to get better in classes, like they are going to have to do at least some stuff that is like relatively vanilla, pretty boring, just like, you know, go in and check it off, and it's going to be something that's necessary for you to do. Like, you know, that's life. It's also fitness. Like you're going to have to do stuff that you don't want to do if you want to get the results that you want to get out of something.
Sure.
And I think people get that, but at the same time, I don't need to beat them over the head with that. So there's stuff that you can do where it's like, you know, you can sprinkle in little bits of things that are like a little bit of more variety, where if it's just like, again, it could be as simple as like, okay, we want to hit squats every week. And even if we're doing back squats, but we could like do things where we're changing tempo or doing it in maybe an interval setting or something where it's like you can still get a pretty good stimulus. And for the average person who's at an affiliate, they're still going to improve enough. And yet it's a little bit varied and different. But I do want to go back to like what you said about like, I feel like a lot of affiliate owners have like this need, like feel an urge to like push like competitive type like goals onto clients, onto like their members. And I feel like, I mean, frankly, I feel like those people haven't really worked with anybody who's like an actual athlete, like who's at like a high level athlete,
Right.
I should say,
Yeah.
right? Like if you've worked with a high level athlete, you understand that like what that person's goals are and what drives them and what they need is like so different from like your average member.
Absolutely.
And not that like you're not trying to improve them both, but you can have way more fun, way more variety, and give them more like traditional CrossFit stuff, and they're still gonna see pretty good progress and be able to enjoy it more than just like, you know, again, for someone who has, you know, they've been doing CrossFit for a decade, they're pretty high level. Like if you give them like random doses of squats once a week, they're not going to get their squats stronger.
Right.
Whereas like most of the members in here, like we could literally want to run a 1 day per week progression for like squatting. And even if it's not super linear, they'll probably get way better.
Yeah.
Like we actually just did that. It was like 2/3 of the people in our classes like PR'd the back squat. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. It was
that
good.
blew my mind a little bit.
It was good, yeah. They stayed really focused and on track with it. But, you know, it's, you know, the fun thing, it's like most of our members are never going to compete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that forcing that onto people is a big turnoff. You know, they're coming in here for an hour a day and it's their time to do something for them or they just want to get better. So I think forcing that it's kind of a bad idea.
Yeah. Like the way I see it, like if people want to be competitive, like either in a class where they're just like going head to head with other people in class
that's all
and
they
like want
need.
to compare to scores and like be bros or whatever, like that's enough competition for a lot of people. Other people that don't even care about their score, they're just like, hey, give me a smiley face at the end of class, like on the board, like I really don't care.
I didn't keep track. I have no idea what my score was.
Yeah, and they have like no clue like what their
And they don't
metrics are
care.
either. Like when we first opened, and I had done this in a lot in the protocol too, it was like I would write a lot of scales like, okay, 70% of, you know, your clean and jerk is like the cap of this Metcon. Like use 135.95 or 70% of your clean and jerk or something, right? And then it's like, well, a lot of newer people have no idea what their clean and jerk max is, or if you ask them to do it today, they could probably lift more than they ever have. And they operate like that bar is relatively light so they can move it well. So like that scale doesn't really work super great. But then also like a lot of the people just have no clue. Like they're like, I don't know what my clean and jerk max is, coach. I'm like, okay. Like that kind of blows my mind a little bit, but yeah.
You should probably read the blog I just wrote.
Yeah. Gotta track it, people.
You gotta track it.
And I feel like people are like, part of it is too, like the first couple of exposures you have of movement, you're just trying to like keep your head above water, like you're treading to try to figure out the whole thing. And like, especially in a class environment, you don't want to feel like embarrassed and like there's a lot of stuff going on besides just like learning, what my clean and jerk max is. Like, I don't know what a hang clean is, coach. Like, what's a hang?
Yeah. They still don't know all the names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like that sort of stuff that I think some of that's just being a newer affiliate. Like, we have more people who haven't, been at our facility for 5 years because we haven't been open for 5 years. But I think to a certain degree, you're always gonna have that. So you just got to be patient and understanding that people are relatively new to things, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, for sure. What would you never program for a class setting? Is there anything you would never program?
I have exercises that I just don't like.
For people or for you?
Like stuff that like HQ pushes that I'm like, this is stupid. Like I've read a lot of, like, since Bosman's taken over and we kind of realized that like he's doing a lot more like kind of like, frankly, like cheesy kind of fitness stuff. Like, why would there be V-ups in a quarterfinals? Not that
Sure.
V-ups necessarily are cheesy, but they become cheesy when you try to race them, which is what you do in quarterfinals.
Sure.
So, like, prior to that actually being in quarterfinals, that would be like a movement that like I probably wouldn't have programmed. Like, like for myself as an athlete, like I hadn't done ab mat sit-ups since being at an affiliate. Like, it has been like 3 years since I had done an ab mat sit-up. I'd programmed those, right? But like, and I've also programmed V-ups, but there are certain movements that I'm just like, this isn't great. Like, I don't really love med ball cleans. Like, that's one where I'm like, I actually had that programmed in a workout for Lumber Capital like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, this is so stupid. I'm just picturing people bicep curling and like squatting
that's what
under
happens,
it,
yeah.
and then standing up, and
It's
like,
really hard to teach. You do it at your L1, and it's like
and I was like,
it's kind of a nightmare.
I was like, this is just gonna be a cheesy workout, and I scrapped it and I just got rid of it.
Yeah.
Like sumo deadlift high pulls with like a bar. Like, that's another one that's L1, and it's like,
I love those, but it's L1.
Yeah, and it's like, again, I might program those at some point, but it's not going to be like a staple in the programming.
So why? What do you not like about the movement
It's just like,
for the general public?
I just don't really get the point,
Okay.
frankly. It's like, how often do you sumo deadlift? Like, I don't think I've ever sumo deadlift in a class setting at a gym.
No.
And it's like, that's fine. I mean, I think most people are just learning to deadlift conventional is hard enough. But, so it's like, why are we doing a sumo deadlift high pull then? If you're teaching conventional deadlift, why do we use some deadlift high pulls? Why not clean high pulls?
Yeah, it's fair.
And I don't even do clean high pulls really in class.
No.
Because it's like, let's just learn how to clean correctly.
So you're not like, you don't have the mindset where, people saw, like when wall walks were in the open for the first year, lots of gyms were programming them immediately because they're like, oh, this is the next movement. And there were also gyms that were like, we're not doing those. They're stupid. Everybody hated them. And then they got stuck because they were programmed again.
Yeah.
So it's not like if you see it in the open, then you immediately jump on the programming train with it, or?
I think that's the difference between competitors programming and programming for a gym where like most of the people have like general fitness goals, is that if you're a competitor, you have to be ready for whatever could come out.
Sure.
And if something has come out in the past, we know it's more likely to show up again. Like, wall walks were in 3 opens in a row, and then never had they been in an open before. If you were like, well, this was a COVID year and it was stupid, cheesy fitness, and we're never going to do wall walks. And it's like, if you're a competitive athlete, you're at a huge disadvantage because you just were asked to do it 2 years consecutively after that in the open as well. Yeah. And it's like, that matters a lot if you're a competitive athlete. Like, who cares if you can do a wall walk or not if you're a non-competitive athlete? It's like,
well, I mean, I agree and I don't. I think that a lot of the community inside the gym, the more they know about the open, they want to do well.
Yeah. So
why would you not program something from the open for class?
Yeah. And again, this is where it's like a gray area, because it's like if you know like a good chunk of your population is going to be doing open workouts because you're going to do it as an affiliate, then to a degree you have to prepare them enough to be able to do the workouts without like getting injured. So you can't like stray so much from like traditional CrossFit programming or like open style testers that you never do that stuff, because if they're asked to do you know, like for example, if you never program muscle ups, like, okay, majority of your people in your classes are never going to do a muscle up, but if you never program them, like even the people that can get to like the point in like a 23.1 where they get to the muscle ups, they're probably not going to go well at all. When there's like opening them up for risk of injury, there's like a lot of other stuff. Like for example, if you've never done double unders, well, maybe double unders is a bad example because you're not going to injure yourself doing double unders probably. But like if you were doing like a bunch of box jumps, for example, and like I want to say 22-1, wall walk, dumbbell snatch, box jump over that one.
Oh yeah.
And that one you had to step down, so maybe there's not as much of a risk of injury there. But like the old open workout where it was like deadlift, box jump. Like if you hadn't done like, 50 plus fairly heavy deadlifts in a workout combined with box jumps before, and you're doing all that rebounding.
Yeah.
And people could rebound those. It's like, man, that's really opening yourself up for issues. So I just kind of think you have to be aware. And if you are planning to do that as an affiliate, then like gear up for it a little bit. I think it's the same thing for Murph. Like it would be irresponsible as a gym to do 0 Murph prep and be like, hey, we're having an event that's Murph. It's like, that's a really bad idea. Like people are going to, get heat stroke or rhabdo or something. Like it's just a bad idea.
Yeah. And, I see a lot of, well, I guess I shouldn't say a lot, but right around the Murph time, I see a lot of posts from other gyms like you shouldn't need to do Murph prep. So you don't feel that way.
Yeah. I mean, I would disagree.
I mean, I do too. I think that it's a lot of volume for people that if they've never done that type of volume.
Unless you're making everyone scale.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's not Murph anymore.
Right.
Like the essence of that workout is really that like you do the whole thing. Like that's sort of the idea behind hero workouts like that.
Yeah, and people want to do the whole thing. When you throw the idea of scaling it, and they're like, but what, then I'm not really doing it. So
that's a fair argument.
Yeah. They want to feel part of the
like if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it right, which is sort of like even if it's not RX, so to speak, like if you do ring rows and band assisted push-ups, that's totally fine. But like it's still a lot of contractions, so you just gotta be preparing for it. At least to a degree. Like you can still be a little bit messed up, but like don't make it such a huge risk.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the whole program for the best, scale for the rest? Do you think that, it's like you said, if you never program muscle ups, but somebody has 1 or 2, and they're not one of your individual design clients, how do you help them get better?
Yeah. That's honestly a challenge. I think different gyms have different like base level kind of average class goer. And I feel like our population here is very average, right? We're like, again, we've, at best a handful of people who are, doing muscle ups if they come out in a workout.
Sure.
And like, again, I have no problem with that. However, I do think it's generally helpful if like you're trying to elevate the level, like the baseline level of skill and strength in the population as a whole. But I don't think that just means like doing like high level stuff every day and then like having everybody scale every day.
Right.
So I wouldn't say like write for the best and then scale for the rest. I would say like try to, again, give a good number of movements of the higher skill relative to maybe like an open level where like, again, we're not seeing like, back pullovers or butterfly ring muscle ups in the open. So it's like, you don't need to program those. It's like, again, if that's sort of like your baseline, and I'm not saying that open should be the measuring stick for everything, but again, if you're a gym who is a CrossFit affiliate and you are going to be doing the open, that's not a bad like benchmark to at least start to standardize to. So it's like, okay, like maybe our higher level stuff is like handstand walking and like muscle ups. It's like, okay, maybe we can throw in legless rope climbs and, a certain, kind of idea of like what is relatively strong for like bench, squat, deadlift, snatch, clean and jerk. And then you can start to like build off, more repeatable work underneath that. So it's like, I kind of think about it as like maybe programming towards like the top quartile and then scaling for the rest. Where it's like, I think if everyone's scaling, then it's just like, why are you even writing it like that? Like
Right.
if you've literally have like one person who can do it, it's just like, you just tell that person to like, okay, use a 30-pound wall ball today to get the
Sure.
desired stimulus that I'm looking for. As
Yeah,
your
or
coach.
give them the option to, I guess, scale up,
Yeah. And I also think like people get in a trap of like wanting to do that all the time. And it's like,
You don't need to.
we had ring rows the other day and it was like, that was the RX and there was no
Yeah.
RX plus. Like
Yeah.
you did the ring rows.
Yeah, a few people were like, really? Just ring rows? Yep, just ring rows.
Yeah. So
Just.
like, I think that can be a trap too, is like people always want to RX or RX plus when it's not appropriate for them yet. It's
Right.
like, there's fine if you get bottlenecked sometimes by a skill or a strength element where it slows you down. You don't get like as good of a workout, so to speak. But that shouldn't be all the time. Like there should be times where like you're still breathing really hard and like feeling like your muscular endurance or like your heart rate, your breathing is the thing that's slowing you down. But again, I think there should be a mix of both throughout a week.
So how, as far as the cycles that you've been programming, they've been really, really awesome, and everybody's been really enjoying the progression of them. Nobody's been bored. Everybody's PRing and seeing progress. How do you decide, based on the current cycle or the previous cycle, what the next one should look like? Do you take a look at all at how people are doing and say, oh, they're not ready for this yet, or how do you go about that?
So honestly, I kind of have a rough idea of like the map of the year for our affiliate. So I have it planned out through Open of 2024 right now of like, this year I'm currently doing 8-week cycles. I'll probably bring that back a little bit. I'll probably do like 6-week cycles for like next year. I think 8's just a little bit long.
Why?
Because unless you're like really varied in how you like, so I build everything off a skeleton. So like, for example, like right now we're doing like bench press or strict press on as like the strength on like Wednesday. And it's every Wednesday, that's what you get. And it's like, if it was like just bench press, or for example, like last cycle, it was like Tuesdays, we were doing a rope, like a Metcon that had rope climbs in it every single Tuesday. There were definitely people who were like, I'm sick of doing rope pull to stance because that's my scale, and doing that every Tuesday for the last 8 weeks. And so I think that's a fair complaint, right? Like obviously like you have to give them enough time to get better at something. But at the same time, there's kind of two ways. You can either make it more narrow and make it for like a shorter period of time, where it's like, this is a very linear progression. We're only going to run it for like 4 or 5 weeks. Where you could say, sort of like we are this cycle, like you're probably going to bench at some point or strict press at some point on Wednesday. It could be either one of those two lifts, or it could be like in a Metcon where it's a little bit more volume based. And likely people haven't been benching or strict pressing that much, where they're probably going to improve either way. But then if you run it for a longer period of time, that way it's like you're hitting the same thing consistently for those 8 weeks, but it's not like you're just doing the exact same progression with like just a few reps different,
Right.
or like just an extra set or something where it's like, this is really boring. I'm tired of doing this. So I think having that as sort of like your shortest like outlook, like I know where this is for the next 6 to 8 weeks, and then I have a rough idea of what the priorities are going to be from late summer 2023, early fall, late fall, and basically every 8 weeks from there. And there's sort of like, I would say I kind of anchor to, again, probably times of the season. Like we know that Open's probably going to be like mid to late February 2024. Murph is like obviously on Memorial Day. So you're looking almost like towards June. And then for most people, it's like, okay, we're probably going to be outside way more, probably doing more running type stuff. Let's make sure they're ready to do that over the summer. And then it's like, as fall rolls around, it's a good, and oftentimes I'll say like, as people come off of like open, they realize that they have certain like strengths and weaknesses that they identified through that, and they often want to get better, or they're comparing themselves to other people. So they're like, okay, I want to get these skills, we need to get these strength levels back up. And typically like something like that, you're doing more conditioning based like metcons, like leading up to, like, again, we're not prepping the average person for the open, but we're maybe to do well in the open, but we're prepping them so they can handle participating in the open.
Sure.
So like naturally there's sort of like okay, let's take some time to sort of rebuild after that with like basic strength movements, which is often like power lifts, or stuff that's a little bit slower, a little bit more basic, like back to basics, more like off-season mode. Again, I don't want to get too caught up in like language of like what I would say for like my athletes, but it does mirror that to a certain extent.
Sure.
And then as you come through the fall, like, okay, you probably tried to push up some of those absolute numbers, and then we can try to transition that more to like Olympic lifting. And again, you're going to be doing all this year round, because I think it is important to keep touches across the entire year round, especially for everyone, right? Because people are signing up for a CrossFit gym, they want to do CrossFit, and like your athletes, they need to prepare to do the sport. So it's like not for class programming, but like for my individual design clients, like that's another thing you just got to think about. It's like trying to keep in touch with that the entire year round. So, and then as you get into like the fall, again, you're going to start thinking about like open again and like holidays and stuff, and like trying to keep people like, fit and healthy and like in here over the holidays.
Motivated.
And that's like, okay, you're probably going to do a lot more stuff that's like erg based at that point, because it's going to be cold out and nobody's going to do anything outside. And there's like a natural kind of flow to that year. And I don't think that really needs to change a lot like year over year, but you can get creative in like how you like kind of attack those priorities throughout the year. So it's sort of like this morph that happens throughout the calendar year, sort of like naturally for most people. Do you have a topic that you'd like to request as a future show, or just a question about training? Reach out to me. My email is ben@zorfitness.com, or you can DM me on Instagram @zorfitness. Lastly, head over to zorfitness.com if you want to browse all of our previous shows with in-depth show notes, as well as educational content for all things training.
Is there ever a time when you're looking at the classes that you programmed and the times and the, who RX and who didn't? Is there a time when you look at it and you're like, okay, this isn't working?
Definitely not that it's like not working. When we first opened, I definitely had to recalibrate.
How? Just because of all the new people?
I think to a degree, but I think more so I just have worked with, like, I think my baseline was shifted. Like, I think I expected too much of the average gym goer. Frankly.
That's funny. I was wondering what that would look like for you, because you've always programmed for, people that are competitive and know what they're doing, and we had a lot of fresh people that didn't know what anything was. So I was wondering if that was going to be a challenge for you as far as programming.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there was a learning curve for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm always learning, but like, yeah, I think just like being able to see again what the average person is going to be able to handle and like come back from and be able to keep showing up. Like, I don't want people to be ever so trashed. Like, I don't want to program like a Murph type workout in class, like on a regular week, because it's like they're not going to show up for 4 days because they're going to be so sore.
Right.
And it's like, I don't want people to do that. I want them to just keep showing up and like getting the routine of showing up. And yes, there's going to be some stuff that's harder. We're going to push the envelope certain places, but like you can do that in a way that's way more calculated, that people aren't going to be trashed from it, and it allows them to keep coming back. So there has been some stuff where I was like, whoa, like this just took, it was a partner workout and they're supposed to split the work. And I was like, okay, this took like 50% longer than I was expecting.
I can recall one of those. I was wondering if there's ever been like an oops time when you were like, oops, I didn't expect it to go that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think luckily it's like
I mean, you're used to, like, you can probably look at a lot of your individual athletes and say, this is probably how long this is going to take. But again, those people have been working out for...
But there's oopsies there too sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'd be lying if there's never an oopsie. You had one this week. It was like,
I did.
I got off the rower and just didn't have any time to clean it.
I was like, why does he want me to quit CrossFit?
I was like, well, okay, I missed the boat on that one a little bit.
It's fine.
And like, that definitely happens, but like, yeah. One, this is like figuring out where people are at, and then figuring out appropriate scales and like communicating those. So like not giving the exact same variation every time.
Yeah.
Or simple as like sometimes people just need to scale the volume instead of scaling whatever it is. Like it's really easy to write something again like I think it's actually a bench workout. It's like Cindy rounds, but like a 30-minute EMOM. Mm-hmm. It's like one round of Cindy for 30 minutes essentially. It's like there's going to be people where like they can do that and that's not very challenging, and then there's going to be another people who would do it for the first 2 minutes and then they're just like hyperventilating for the next 28, and they're going to be trashed from doing that. And it's like, okay, like is air squat your easiest movement? It's like for a squat, if it is, then it's like you just got to scale back to volume at that point.
Yeah.
Like there's an easy way to do that would be something like an AMRAP, right? Where it's like, if it is Cindy, right? There's going to be some people who get 25 rounds and there's going to be other people who get 12.
Yeah.
And that's just because of the rate that they can move. But if you're writing task priority based work where it's like 4 rounds for time, and you got, 15 air squat, 15 ring row, and it's like, then that's your RX, then there's going to be people who they just slug through that work and it takes them forever. So if you are going to program like more of those basic workouts, you just need to communicate that like when it's appropriate for people to scale volume, something like that.
I think even teaching pace in the class environment with all the new people was interesting. And even getting them to understand, oh, I can scale the reps. It's like, well, yeah, if you're not up to that volume level yet, then absolutely scale the reps. But it was like we had I think it was probably through the Murph prep, 5:30 a.m. class, there were some people that were experienced. So they were, really banging out their squats, push-ups, going really fast. And the people that didn't were like, is that how fast we're supposed to do this?
Yeah.
So it's like teaching them just all of it. It's very interesting.
The pacing thing has been super interesting to me because, again, if you've been doing something long enough, like you look at a piece of work and you're like, what you should pace it based on how much is there, right? Yeah. And that's how you pace it. It's like, oh, I have to run 5 miles. Okay, my pace on 5 miles is going to be a whole lot slower than on 800 meters because 5 miles is a lot more work than 800 meters.
Yeah.
I specifically remember it was like, I want to say like every 3 minutes for 10 sets, like a couple deadlifts, couple swings, couple cals, or something like that on like an erg. And it was like supposed to be like maybe like 90 seconds of work, so it was about 1-to-1 work rest. And it was like people went out so hard on that first one.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
They trashed themselves, and I was like, you understood it was 10 sets of work, right? Like, why did you go so fast in the first one? Like, did you think you could recover from it in that 90-second period? Yeah, it's just like sometimes people, I don't even know if they think about it, to be honest. No. They just go.
And that's the thing, in the class environment, we have, all these guys that it's like one guy goes super hard and all the other guys are like, I got to do that too. I got to keep up with them.
But the interesting thing was I reprogrammed that same workout like 3 months later after we had gone through like, again, probably 6 or 8 weeks of like different looks at that same sort of thing. Like, I think we even use language around like wanting to be like a ramping effort where it was like you try to increase the calories on the ergs each time essentially in the work window that you had. When we revisited it, nobody was trashed from it.
Right.
I mean, it was tough by the end.
It went way better though.
Yeah, but it wasn't like everybody overpaced it.
No,
right? So it was like just a matter of like calibrating to that work and like figuring it out.
Yeah, the first time the calories went from 20 to 18 to 16 to 14.
It's a long half hour when you do it that way.
That's not how it goes. So, that's been fun.
Yeah, and the other thing that we've done a lot is, or maybe not a lot, but more than other affiliates, which is probably zero, is like just prescribing like efforts on stuff. Like, like Thursdays, again, we're not really doing like a recovery based day, so to speak, where we're not like, doing, stretching and breath work and calling it a day. Like we're actually
Right.
writing programming on that day.
Yeah,
So
I think it's good. I mean, giving them, so it's a 60% day, and
Yeah.
that should be your effort for the day.
yeah, and then it's like, okay, you see this, 4 or 5 minute AMRAPs with 5 minutes of rest in between on like an erg active recovery, and it's like lower eccentric movements that are pretty easy for the average person, like box step ups and farmer's carries at a moderate weight or something, right? And like erg. So it's like, it's not going to leave you super trash. And then you can actually moderate your intensity on something like that, where it's not super high power output, where you can go 60% if you want to. It's like, hey, if you've only been here like twice this week and that's
Yeah.
all you're going to get, like, hey, go for it.
Yeah.
Like, and people are pretty good about that, I think. I thought that I would get more pushback on that sort of thing, where it's like, really, coach? Like 60% effort? Like, I want to go hard. But I think people get it that, like, oh, I have permission not to go super hard, and this isn't
Yeah.
going to be recorded today, and that means that tomorrow I better come ready to go.
Yeah, and it's nice to kind of take that pressure off where you're not putting a score on the board. Even though they're not, high competitive people, they still know that it's going up there and everyone's going to see it. And the 5:30 p.m. class looks at it and sees what they did, and it's like the pressure's off. And like you said, they have permission to go at a pace that they feel is appropriate for the day. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think just giving people opportunities to be smart,
yeah,
frankly, like don't come in every day and crush yourself.
no, you
Yeah.
can't.
And I think that is something that's top down. Like when they see the people that they look up to, like other athletes in here, and they're not crushing themselves every single day. Like, yeah, they work hard. Yeah, they do, go hard sometimes in workouts and like go there. But then there's other times where it's like, oh yeah, they just saw them like spinning on the bike for 20 minutes easy and doing some stretching and breath work, and they went home for that day. And it's like, I think being in an environment where you do see that, and you see that in other sports all the time, but like in CrossFit, in the early days, like that wasn't what you saw. So I think
Yeah.
having a little bit more, like, it's just a product of the culture that you're in. So I think I think generally have a pretty good balanced approach to things in that regard, at least.
Do you get any inspiration from other programmers, or is this just all Ben Wise, the science guy? Putting that
I
on
don't
a
think
shirt.
I've
Putting
ever
that on
had
a
an
shirt.
original thought. I mean, that's the case for everything. Like,
Yeah. I
that's
mean, you
all
had to
I
get
ever
it
do
from
is,
somewhere,
like,
right? I mean,
yeah, it's like,
but is there any like one particular style of programming that really kind of stuck for you, or?
honestly, no. I mean, like I have people that I keep track of, and even like other blogs out there and stuff. Like I'll look at their stuff, like revisit it, see how they're doing things, and see how it's like a different approach to what we're doing. Like, I'm always curious to see what other affiliates are programming. Like when you go back like down to Florida and go
Yeah.
on vacation and like drop in somewhere, I'm like always curious to see what the workout of the day is, and like maybe 5 years ago, I definitely was more like, I would see something and be a little bit more like reactive to it, in the sense that like like right now, I just recorded a podcast on like zone 2 training. and not just about that. It was kind of like a joke, because like everyone's talking about zone 2 right now, I feel like. And it's like,
seen that.
so I talked about heart rate training. But like it'd be really easy to be like, look at the media that's going out right now and be like, oh, all my athletes are doing like minimum 3 hours zone 2 every week. And it's like, is that necessary, dude?
I'm really
Like,
glad you didn't do that with
no,
the ice baths.
right? Exactly. But that's the kind of stuff, like,
Yeah.
like one of the episodes on the fitness movement, I forget which one it was like I did one on like heat, cold, thermoregulation, and part of that I talked about like cold exposure and some other stuff, and it was like, even then it was starting to be really hyped up, but like now all these companies are targeting like, the cold immersion.
Yeah.
And that stuff's great, but it's at the same time it's just being hyped up like crazy right now. And it's
Yeah.
again, you're gonna see this go in cycles. Like all the fitness like industry things go in like these waves where
Sure.
it's like, 30 years ago, if someone went outside in wintertime without a jacket on, you were like, put a jacket on, you're going to get sick. And now it's like everyone on Instagram is jumping into a cold plunge.
Yeah, ice baths.
Yeah. And
It's trending
do
now.
you think like people are just like so much more educated now? It's like to a degree, but you're also being sold something.
Sure.
It's like,
Absolutely.
what are you being sold? It's like that this is going to increase your performance that much. And then it's like, well, it's just really about like where you want to allocate your stress to, because like you have limited bandwidth to deal with that kind of thing. So if you're doing 21, 15, 9 of thrusters and pull-ups, and then you're going to go jump in your ice bath later on, it's like you just got limited bandwidth of how much of that kind of thing you can take on in a day without it just having negative consequences to it. So if you're an athlete and you like getting cold, like that's cold, that's cool, but like
I'm not going to make the whole gym do it.
I mean, like there are benefits to like, again, there's so many things that like that you could incorporate. Like we do breath work probably once a week.
Yeah.
After class.
They love
Even
it.
if it's like 3 to 4 minutes, you know, cadence breathing where it's like an extended exhale. And it's very easy. It's a couple minutes, and it's like we could very easily do that every single day and like make that part of our thing. But it's like, again, that's not why people are here. They're not here to jump into a sauna and a cold plunge and, you know, do wall walk intervals in between. Like that's not why they're here.
No.
So I feel like you have to safeguard your, like if you're a coach, you have to safeguard your population a little bit from whatever trends are going on. I guess is my point, right? Like it'd be very easy to be like, oh, well, there was wall walks in the last 3 opens, so that's all we're ever going to do. We're never going to do kipping handstand push-ups anymore. It's like probably not a great idea, right? Same with like whatever thing, right? Like if I saw, oh, this you know, influencer coach is posting like this protocol, oh, we have to do that as an affiliate because it's just a great idea. It's like, I just feel like that's not a very mature perspective to have as someone who's, you know, responsible to other people.
Right.
Is to be super reactive and like, oh, this is the new thing and we're going to jump on it. It's like, okay, there are going to be new tools that like you can recognize and start to incorporate and like figure out what's appropriate, but you don't need to do that in a way that's experimenting on your athletes or being reactive in a negative sense where it's like, oh, I'm just going to throw away everything I've been doing for the last decade and go with this. It's like, that's not a mature approach at all.
Yeah, I think people appreciate consistency. You know, they want to know if they're used to some, you know, they don't want, you know, repetitiveness to where it's like beaten to the ground, but I think they want to know what they're going to get, you know, they're the same style, good results, progress, which kind of makes, so what do you think about gyms that use online programs?
They can do whatever they want.
How come you've never done that? You just like to write it all?
Yeah. I mean, I like our gym having our feel.
Yeah, it's got to be time consuming. So, I mean, I think that I've heard a lot of people actually say like they respect that you actually take the time to come up with a really thought out, calculated cycle every time. So,
and that's why.
Yeah.
People appreciate it.
They do.
They appreciate it. It gets good results, and I know our population, our facility, like no one else does. And that could change down the line. Like we could have somebody who comes in and they're super gung-ho about programming and they want to do it, and like provided they actually would do it correctly and be the right person for it, and you know, I want to give it up.
I was going to say, would you be able to give it up? I can't believe that you would give it up.
Not in the immediate future, but yeah. I mean, they're like, but my point is like, you know, why did me and my dad make a mural on the wall on the wall out there? It's like, because it was there and I could do it. Mm-hmm. Like, why not? It gives a cool like flavor to the gym.
It makes us who we are.
People walk in and they like feel a certain way about it. And it's like, it's the same thing with programming. It's like, you walk in and you see the programming written in the same way every time in the same sort of style. Like, okay, it's going to be different every time because you are at a CrossFit gym, you are doing some CrossFit, and it's like, but at the same time, it's got like, you know, it's our gym. We have our, you know, spice on it.
People are learning to speak Ben. They know what things mean now. Like, Stacy, what's RPE? And
That's
it's
one of the few things I don't actually, like, I still abbreviate and don't write out.
yeah. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones, but they're like, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah. People get really confused about, like, okay, so it's 3 sets, but it's an AMRAP. And then resting in between.
This week it was AMRAP -2. So AMRAP -2. So as many reps as possible, we're only doing 2 pull-ups. No, as many reps as possible, -2.
Yeah.
So teaching them that has been a lot of fun. Teaching them Ben.
That's like really simple stuff, but like
it's simple to you because
I do try to.
You
that's true.
because you know it.
Yeah.
To the average gym goer or to like we've got people who've never gone to the gym. Period. So we're their first ones.
Yeah.
So they're like, what does rate of perceived exertion mean?
Yeah. And usually, like, when I do bring them up to the board with something like that, I do try to explain it a little bit, like, not to the extent where I bore the veterans in class, but,
Sure.
like, especially if I know somebody who's relatively new, it's like, hey, I might not even say, like, rating a perceived exertion. I'd be like, RPE scale, that's, like, sort of like a scale of, like, 1 to 10, so 7 would be, like, a 70% effort, so we're looking at maybe 70 to 80% today as your top set or whatever. Yeah. And that way, it kind of can layer in some education with also explaining like what the heck's this thing on the board.
Yeah, I think they feel like they learn something almost every week. They're like, oh, I didn't realize that. That's pretty cool that we can measure it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I try to remove at least some of that language. Like my individual design clients like to get a way more like. The number of abbreviations of stuff that I use in like that program is way different.
There's a key for abbreviation.
Yeah, there's a whole tab. but like even as simple as it is, like I'll write out every 3 minutes times 6 sets, 4 squats with a 3-second lower, right? Like, okay, the person might have to think about it for a second and kind of process what that means, but like you can piece it together. Where if it was like, FS parentheses 6 by 6x4 at 40x1, they'd be like, I have no clue where to even start with this.
The tempo, explaining the tempo, it blew their minds. So the last one isn't about class, but I've always been kind of curious. How hard is it to program for yourself?
I mean, I've been doing that basically since like high school on and off, maybe even earlier than that.
I just feel like it would be really easy to fall into the whole, well, I'm really good at these, so this is what I want to do this week. Or I'm really bad at that, so I'm not gonna program myself those.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be really disciplined to make yourself kind of do it all, like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, I mean, again, everybody's got like biases, and I'm sure this is like, there's biases that come out in my individual design athletes that I see as a coach, and I like try to course correct for stuff like, oh, I see that, a lot of people are, dealing with knee irritation by the time they get to the point where they're ready to compete or something like in, a quarterfinals prep cycle. It's like, if that's the case, I'm not saying that was the case, but if it's something like if you notice something like that, you kind of have to be like, well, am I not giving enough joint health stuff? Am I giving too much squatting intensity combined with knee flexion stuff in like my conditioning based things? Like, what's going on? Is that inherent to CrossFit? And it's like, that's sort of a cop-out answer. So it's like, you got to figure out like what's going on and try to course correct a little bit, like I said, and like identify like what biases that you are dealing with. And that's sort of a bit of a moving target when like the sport you're preparing for is a moving target. But so like my point is like, I definitely don't get it right, but I don't get it right any of the time. Like I've never gotten it right for anybody. I'm really selling it here, aren't I?
Wait a second.
But like my point is like, you never write a perfect program, right? Like never can you write something where it's like, this is exactly what the person needed and give them no more and no less. And it was like, you never even, well, first of all, you can't know that, but also like, there's always something that you could have done differently. You could have tweaked a little bit to make it like ideal. So it's like, yeah.
So you never have felt like, man, I really nailed that one for this person.
Oh, yeah, I felt like that, but I wouldn't say it was like, again, I think it would be super arrogant if I was like, this is exactly what you needed, and we did it exactly right. Like, I think there's things that have been like, wow, that progression went really well and you saw great results. But I wouldn't say that like, oh, that was 100% exactly what you needed and we nailed it 100% of the time. It was like, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like you just saw good results on that, and like we'll continue to use that sort of thing. Like, for example, it was like Stacy responds really well to getting some extra pushing and pulling, like accessory type stuff in more of a CrossFit setting because you enjoy that, and then you also get a sick pump and some really good benefits from that, right? And it's like, okay, that's good to know and super useful. And like we've used that in the past and we saw good results, so we'll probably use that in the future again. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say that like I got it just right. So I guess that's like my long-winded way of saying like, I don't think I get it right for myself all the time, but like you don't have to get it perfect. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
I don't think I'm like, I don't know. Like I guess people are just like not super, like if anything, I would probably get to the point where like I'm doing like too much of the stuff that I'm not bad at, where I'm just like not responding to it as well as maybe I could be. Like, okay, if squatting 3 times a week is good, is 4 better, right? Like you have to draw the line somewhere on that sort of stuff. So it's like, you know, if 25 minutes of handstand walk skill work is great, then why not an hour before I do my push jerks? And it's like, well, my triceps feel like baby triceps.
Yeah.
By the time I try to do my next thing, and it's like, well, that's not productive anymore. So I definitely don't have it figured out, but I think, I don't know, I just try to be objective with myself like I try to be with my athletes.
Nice. Good answer. I think that's all I have, Ben.
All right. Well, if people got follow-up questions or stuff, we can always revisit this down the line. Or we could always get more specific as well, if that'd be helpful. Like pull out specific examples from class and like walk through them. But yeah, thanks for hosting.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me grill you.
Thanks for listening today. If you're someone who just started listening to the show, I would encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. If you're someone who's been listening for a while, I would encourage you to rate and review the show. And lastly, the best thing that you can do to support our work is also the best thing that you can do for your performance. And that is by hiring one of our coaches. Until next time, stay the course.